working into our Health and Human Services partners. Jill, are you going to give us some background for this?
Just very briefly, we've talked a couple times about some of these supplemental requests, or the Lawrence Douglas County Housing Authority, about the nature of the request that they have that is included in the proposed budget. But I just wanted to flag that. But we have representatives from most of the organizations that are on this list. We have that are here, and it's in particular the ones that have supplementals before you, but then we have other folks here that are available to answer questions. The one thing that I did want to acknowledge was we do have Brett Hartford here from the Homeless Resource Center. Yes, formerly the DARE Center. When we first began accepting supplemental requests for this year's budget cycle, the DARE Center had requested a one-time capital request to make improvements to their building. After some one-on-one some conversations with Brett and I and Bob Tryansky, we had a conversation more focused on, as we look to the larger strategic plan to address housing and homelessness in Douglas County. There was a shared agreement around the lane, so to speak, that the county is sitting in and that the city is sitting in as it relates to the work that the Homeless Resource Center is doing, and that's really in the emergency response phase. And as we began to look at, potentially adding a new community partner, we came to an agreement. I had a good discussion with Brett that it would be best suited for that request to go to the city of Lawrence. So that request did come to us, and I just want to acknowledge that Brett's here, and he has been a tremendous partner in the work that we've been doing to address homelessness in Douglas County, and he's a part of the ecosystem of partners, and I appreciate him coming today. But if you have questions, he's available.
Representatives from the Humane Society online.
Yes. Beyond that, I'll hand it over to commissioners to go to questions.
Hey, commissioners, where would you like to start?
I got a question for Just Food. Hi, good morning. Thanks for being here. And forgive me if I'm forgetting, because sometimes we've had these conversations year over year and budget, and I don't rewind the tape and listen to all of them, and it doesn't always make them in my notes. Can you talk to us about the history of the city funding? So we have history totals back to 2021, and so I'm just looking at those lines, and I know that obviously the story of our line, I don't remember why the city stopped funding your program, and if the previous funding had been specific to any type of program that Just Food was running, or if it was operational also.
So I just need to hold this, right? Yeah.
No, you don't need to hold it. And
I just
also,
need to, okay, I was like,
for
it's-
Commissioner Willie, who wants us to remember to have folks introduce themselves, if you can give a quick introduction, please.
Andre Walker, Executive Director of Just Food. City funding, I want to say like 2018, 2019, previous to me being Executive Director. They basically came and had told Elizabeth Keever, who was previous ED, that we were not meeting, or they were changing the criteria for funding, and therefore we're cutting funding. I was not a part of that conversation, though.
Okay, so in your tenure, which I realize has been relatively short, and I know you aren't, I should have prefaced that, but there's no current conversations with the city of Lawrence about any potential funding for their programs. Part of why I'm asking also is because the increased cost in commodities is sort of a given and unsurprising. And I'm reading from the narrative that there's a real increased need and demand for Just Food resources across the county in kind of both at your pantry and out in the community where you are providing meal and food support to different programs. So I'm trying to grasp if you are, I guess maybe a list of those types of programs could be helpful. Some are sort of mentioned, but if, there's there's school buildings, there's other nonprofit organizations, right? Maybe some of the homeless outreach or community shelter, or I'm just not clear on that. So that would
Who
be
our
helpful.
partners are and where we distribute food, is that what?
Say that again?
Who our partners are and where we distribute?
Yeah, so I think that's one part of my question is to get a clearer picture of that, sort of all the different places that the food is being distributed to, and if any of it is tied to sort of explicit funding streams be related to that, or any sort of payment for that. And then if it's possible to identify whether the growing need or there's been a growing distribution to our unsheltered neighbors in particular, kind of across service providers as they exist, whether it's providing any food support with homeless outreach team or at the community shelter. I'm not sure if any of that's happening, and I'd be curious to try and understand that better, because I just want to, it's not surprising to me that the need is rising. And I'm trying to identify if that's really sort of across the board, all income levels, all housing situations, or if you've really seen an increase in requests from community partners requesting that sort of commodity distribution support. That was very long-winded. I'm sorry. I just wanted to try and give some context to what I'm trying to unpack here a little bit.
So we work with 32 community partners throughout Douglas County. 19 out of those 32 are schools. That's Baldwin, Eudora, their entire district. They actually are lump sum, whereas Lawrence Public Schools, we distribute to them as well, but each individual school checks out or comes and shops within our warehouse or our food bank. Other community partners, like LCS, is signed up as a community partner pantry or service need. We also do things with like ECM, Sunrise Project. So doing those community meals and things, they are allowed to come and shop on Mondays. We, over the last year, have had to begin to implement more procedures and policies because we are stretched so thin. So like a year ago, previous to a year ago, I was in charge of purchasing, and the majority of the purchasing we were doing was for milk, eggs, meat, and produce. And now about $8,000 to $9,000 every single month is for cans. So those non-perishable items that we used to be able to get donated are no longer being donated as the same capacity. So we're just stretched a lot more, and the need is very much needed even at the school level. Like every August we do a school pantry meeting, and the teachers or whoever is coordinating those pantries within the school system are really struggling as well. So trying to beef up what we have for the schools to meet the needs in the community. And then we also do like Cruising Cupboard, which is our mobile food pantry. We go out to Baldwin. We just received a grant to add another stop because the need is growing in Baldwin. It's one of our highest delivery spaces. The majority of those are seniors there. And then we also go to Lecompton and Eudora, and then we have multiple stops within Lawrence as well.
Commissioners, I wanted to also just acknowledge that, food security is one of the focus areas of the community health plan. It's one of the focus planks. And I know Andrea and some of her colleagues from Just Food are active participants in that, as am I. And that strategic plan under the community health plan is developed, I think that's something, this would be an important area along with the other parts of the community health plan, like anti-poverty, behavioral health. It could be an important follow-up presentation that we could give to you. Also, we could knit all of this together. Just Food is an important part of that ecosystem, but I think you'll see the leadership of Live Well trying to knit all that together and think about that rural and urban need. And again, I think Just Food's been an important partner in that. And I just want to, there is a larger strategic plan to address this need that I think is coming together as we speak and could be available later this year to present to you all.
Did I answer all your questions? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, of course.
So your supplemental request is based on purchases of food, but your budget has food purchases remaining flat for $513,800. So is it additional food or additional value of food? Like how do I square those?
So we have kept the budget the same for the last 2 years. When we do our budget process, we are just trying to find and diversify our resources to buy more food. Also, the reality is packages or the amount of food you can buy for the same amount you could a year ago is way different. The packaging is getting smaller and prices are going up. So we're getting less poundage per unit, per se. So when I did purchasing originally a couple of years ago, I was averaging 81 cents a pound purchased, and right now we're sitting at, I think, $1.42 per pound. So that's astronomically, like, we're just not able to purchase the same amount.
We tell partners not to include supplemental requests in these budgets, so that's why it's not in there.
No, I recognize that, but it's, the anticipation is that, I mean, I'm just curious about, not showing an increased need in the budget also, so. not the
I just
increased
want to be
income.
clear that we tell them not to put their supplemental requests in. So my assumption is she was just going to.
So is the anticipation then to buy less poundage of food for distribution, or find it in other ways?
We're trying to find it in other ways. I mean, we're constantly trying to garner new food recovery locations. We now have Chop Shop, our commercial kitchen space, so that has allowed us to take catered food or food that comes from other commercially and repack it, because you have to have certain health policies and parameters around that. So just constantly trying to negotiate and get the best price for the most pounds that are also nutrient dense, right? We don't want to buy food that isn't nutritionally the best. Like, that's our main priority too, is not only just bringing food in, but bringing good food in for our community.
And I did see in this year, you're anticipating using some of your fund balance for operations.
Correct.
Okay, and that's fairly new for the organization, I think.
Correct.
Okay. So you're still at about 100% of your expenses in your fund balance, but you can see that that is being readjusted. Is there a particular goal for where that will readjust to that Just Foods is comfortable with?
So I've been in this position as ED for a year. This is the first time we've had a director of development. Allie will actually be here for a year as well next week. So, we've never had a director of development before, and having that position new to us for this year, we've just kind of created a budget, and then we just plan to increase and improve every year.
Commissioners, are there other questions? Just Food? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for Gabby. Gabby, you might want to introduce yourself too. In your narrative, you talked about opportunities exist through the ESG or Emergency Solutions Grant administered by Kansas Housing Resources to assist paying for this position. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
We can charge a small amount, and I don't know the percentage off the top of my head, for administrative costs to those grants. And something we included, not in that grant, but in the previous year's grant to the Affordable Housing Advisory Board at the City of Lawrence, is I think it was a 10% administrative cost, which could go towards the expenses of this position. And also, yes, my name is Gabby Sprague. I'm the Housing and Human Services Program Manager. My apologies.
Thanks, Gabby.
So the 75,800 in the supplemental request, is that, if there's a possibility of getting some grant support for that, also, would that lower that amount, or is that already considered here?
That is not considered here. It would lower that amount.
And it's just a portion of it, a fraction of that?
Correct.
Thanks. We have our representative from the Salvation Army here. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Lieutenant Landon McClintock, Executive Director, Corps Officer for Salvation Army here in Douglas County.
So you had a supplemental request with us last year, very early in the project.
Correct.
Can you give us a little update on progress on the project and then how this fits into your funding streams?
Yeah, so starting at the beginning of this year, we formulated, again, early on, last year, we were just wrapping up a feasibility study very early on in the campaign process. Currently, at the beginning of this year, we began a large gifts committee, and they are beginning to solicit donations right now, or gifts for that campaign currently. Right now, we are at 160,000 raised or pledged, and 100% participation from our advisory board and ministry councils. Right now in the process, we are going after those larger gifts, as this is the time and place that needs to happen.
And the goal for the larger gifts, would that be that 420,000 that's in the budget? Or is that represented someplace else?
So the way we were looking at this is the 420 in this contributions has to do with mail appeal. The 1 million request that we put in was purely capital. Trying to add capital accounts into this operating budget was a concern for us, but 1 million would be strictly for renovations and capital.
And the total project cost, sorry, I should be able to pull it up.
The total for this phased campaign is $3.7 million.
Got it, thanks. All right. Any other questions for Salvation Army? Okay. What about other partners?
I have a question for the Housing Authority. Hi, y'all. Welcome. I'm just curious to know, and I don't expect you to rattle off numbers off the top of your head, but anecdotally, if you can talk about the success of the landlord incentive program. So that's something we funded historically. It's it sort of fell off in the budget and now is back before us. And I'm supportive, and I was also hoping to see maybe some information about, like, I know it's a little bit hard to measure, but how many folks have we been able to like keep housed because of those use of those funds and that relationship between the liaison?
Galal Obaid, Vice President of Program Operations at the Housing Authority. So I'll share with Jill copies of the latest report on the program. But to date, with the $50,000 that we received from Douglas County, we served 39 households, 120 individuals, 75 being children. 36% of those households were head of households with disabilities. 59% were identified as BIPOC. 79% that were served had an AMI below 30%, so very low income households. In that program, it had like three.
Hey, Galal, will you make sure you talk right in that
Yes.
microphone? Sorry,
this
just so
better?
for
Yeah.
anybody who's listening. Thanks.
No problem. So in that program, there were 3 incentive opportunities available. One being a security deposit for households that were experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness, whereas the security deposit was the barrier to housing. The other part was incentivizing landlords to rent to households that were experiencing homelessness or at risk of being homeless. And the idea is that they would reduce their screening criteria. And the third option that landlords had access to is a damage relief fund. Because they are reducing their screening criteria, landlords were taking on a stigmatized, essentially, occasionally stigmatized financial risk. The idea is voucher holders may cause damages to units. But since March 2023, we've only had 7 households cause damages in excess of $500 after the security deposit. So very low number compared to, we have about 240 households that kind of transfer out of their units or move out. So looking at that, 7 households is less than 3%. And we're able to have this program to support the idea that our voucher holders are not damaging units in excess of the general market. So I think it's been a very successful program in getting people who are at risk of being homeless or experiencing homelessness into housing opportunities, vouchers.
Thank you for having those numbers. I really appreciate that. And I do look forward to seeing them if you can share them with Jill to share out with us.
They've provided them monthly to us with their outcomes report, so we just need to follow up and give them to you.
Yeah, no, and I know that the budget summaries are always a very high level summary, so no shade for not having it in there. I just wanted to have a better understanding. Also, do those numbers reflect how many new landlords have potentially signed on to work with the housing authority since the existence of that program? You know, we've talked a lot over the years about the massive loss and exodus of landlords and property management companies. Have we attracted some new
Yeah.
folks?
So I think in collaboration with the ordinance that passed last June, we've had at least 72 new landlords that have joined in on the program.
Thanks for that report back.
I just wanted to flag too that everything that Glau just talked about, the three ways that those funds are used that's exactly when we were talking about that flexible housing pool earlier. The second bullet of the three that's in that request, those are exactly the kind of things. With each individual, you never know what they're going to need because of the individual barriers that they have to get them housed. And I think the Housing Authority has really been a great partner in doing that.
Yeah, it's a program that I've been really excited about, just giving some support to landlords to take a risk and like work through that stigma and then hopefully be long-term partners with us also. And the request is for 50,000, but that's 50,000 every 2 years. Is there a benefit, is that right? Then is there a benefit to funding it that way as opposed to 25,000 a year?
I think we just need some time to work on that. I think it just took them longer to spend it. So we need to get offline with the housing authority and figure out if it's 100,000 ongoing or 75,000 ongoing. It's harder for us to do 50 up, 50 down, 50 up, 50 down. So we just haven't had time to have that conversation in advance of budget.
And I'm Shannon Ellery with the Housing Authority. I'll just add that we started funding it with ESG, so we were trying to spend that money, right? Because it had
ESG.
emergency
Solutions.
services grants. And so that's where we kind of started with it. And so we were slow in using the county's first allocation because we needed to spend that first.
It was also a new program at the time too.
Yeah.
It was a whole new, just getting landlords on board and building that trust.
Yeah, and I will also say, I assume Galal probably said, but the Housing Authority also puts 50,000 of its own reserves into this program. So we're trying to create a continuous fund so that we don't run out of money, right? I mean, because sometimes it's none, and sometimes all of a sudden we have a bunch of people who need help.
And are there other grant opportunities, or is that a renewable grant opportunity?
It is not. ESG did not renew for that purpose.
It was those were COVID dollars at first too, right?
Correct, and the Housing Authority isn't eligible for ESG funds. That was more of a flexibility that COVID offered.
Okay. So something like Federal Home Loan Bank, is this a space that they would work in at all?
We are happy to check on that.
Any other questions for Housing Authority on that request? All right. What other questions for partners do we have?
And commissioners, I mentioned this earlier, but James Chislem is here from the Lawrence Community Shelter, and there's going to be, again, a special meeting. I'll put the agenda for that meeting. That's going to be Thursday for the Lawrence Community Shelter Board of Directors. It's a special meeting in that the primary topic of discussion is to have a conversation with the city and the county representatives on that board, which I am one of, around just evaluating the progress to date on that new governance model, and just having a conversation with the new leadership, and that being James and the staff that he's hired, and to just have a reflection on progress to date, but also looking ahead to what does the future look like. So that's coming, and you're welcome to join me. I'll have all the information in the manager's memo. But again, James is here if you have any questions.
Thanks to Shannon Oury for serving on that board on behalf of the county.
Ooh, yes.
You ready to move on?
I think just the comment that I've been really pleased to see the Lawrence Community Shelter change and grow, and I've been pleased that the county's been a part of it the way that we are. Just great things happening there, and it's always good to hear. So any updates that come to us, we're happy to have those.
Sure, and I regularly participate in those monthly board meetings. One thing that didn't come up when we were talking about the ongoing operational support for a family shelter is the county's funding commitment to the Lawrence Community Shelter. It's been in place for several years, and it's $296,000. That funding amount stems from a time when they were serving families. So I don't know how to unpack that about, and right now our funding is, it's operational support for the Lawrence Community Shelter and all the things that they do. And there's a lot of partnerships, in particular with our reentry department. At the last board meeting last week or the week before, the staff at the Lawrence Community Shelter was talking about the success of the partnership with the reentry program and how many more people are being served even at the Pallet Village beyond what we initially hoped was 3 people. They've expanded that partnership with the county, but families are not served at the Lawrence Community Shelter anymore for a variety of reasons, which I'm very supportive of. But we have historically had a commitment to funding that operational support. But again, we're also trying to thread this, so have our lane, so to speak, with our partners at the City of Lawrence on how to share that operational commitment.
But there's nothing proposed as a change currently in
No,
the
not currently.
funding, just ongoing conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a couple of questions over the budget for Lawrence Community Shelter. I don't know if you want to join us up here, or, and Jill
You
can
guys
answer some
can
also.
go back in the audience.
Right.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for joining us. If you want to give a brief introduction.
Hello, everybody. I'm James Chisholm, the Executive Director for the Lawrence Community Shelter.
Thank you. I did notice in the salaries from the 2024 adopted budget to the current estimates that it was significantly down for the year and then comes back for the 2025 budget request. Is it just open positions that you're currently hiring for, or just curious about that?
So I think we filled all the positions that we need, and so the request for 2025 would be to continue to partially fund those positions.
And is it an increase in your utilities, building maintenance, et cetera? Are there expenses from the Pallet Village that are coming under that?
No.
So those are all to do with the building?
Right,
Probably
they're all for the Lawrence
expanded
Community Shelter.
capacity that's been going on there?
Right.
Okay. And will that have an impact for housing or holding space for the pallets that will also be on site at the?
So the pallets that are going to be behind the shelter,
Yep.
the staff is going to be funded from the city. So we would still continue to use the county funding partially for, a lot of it's for our Rapid Housing and Housing Navigator that works directly with the Housing Authority. So that's partially what we do with the county funds.
And the last question, there was a debt payment under the 2023 actuals, and this was before your time, so that then went away for 2024 and is back again for the 2025 budget. Is that accurate?
We moved some things around with their budget because 2023 was, and 2024's budget for the Lawrence Community Shelter looks a lot different because of the carve out for the Pallet Village, and because of the City of Lawrence's requests to expand service. So we had a couple of discussions, Sarah, James, and I, around what's best suited for our funding to how to allot that, and I think that was where one of the expenses of where they landed, but I think it shifts a little bit.
So is there a debt payment on the building there that the organization holds?
That payment is to the city.
The city, to the city. Okay, thanks. I don't have any questions. I've really enjoyed hearing about the work and the progress. It's been
Okay,
phenomenal.
hopefully you can join us on Thursday.
All right. Commissioners, other questions or for any of the partners under the Health and Human Services? All right, I think with that, do we want to break before we move into administrative or just jump in?
Keep moving.
It's all you, Sarah.
Starla and Jimmy, if you could come on up, that'd be great. And we'll see if we need Michelle later. And Brooke, well, Michelle and Brooke, come on up. I don't think so. We have a long list of questions for Jimmy Wilkins. Commissioners, I'm really proud to bring our administrative team to the table here. So now we're going to talk about the departments of administration, IT, and maintenance, and then we're also going to cover the utilities budget because that's largely managed by Jimmy and Starla. So under administration, we have a lot of different hats that we wear in administration. We have finance, we have HR, we have sustainability, we have heritage conservation, we have criminal justice, behavioral health, and capital projects. In 2024, we added a deputy county administrator position and funded it. Included in your funding for 2025 is one-time funding for the 5-year update for the solid waste plan with the City of Lawrence and the countywide implementation of the McGrath compensation study. Included under administration was the requested and funded for a finance analyst position. You also have a request as we've for a flexible supportive housing pool that we have funded through the behavioral health budget and is included. The family shelter one-time capital funded is included. The specialty court assessment for behavioral health court and criminal and for drug court is included for one-time funding. And there was also a request for the Housing Stabilization Collaborative Program Specialist that was requested but not funded. For IT, there were 2 positions that were requested and 1 was funded. As you note on their budget outline, there was some additional funds added for software subscription services and technology hardware and software. For maintenance, 1 position was requested with the remodel and expansion of the Judicial and Law Enforcement Center and the Emergency Communications and Emergency Management building. We funded that position to start in July of 2025, and that would be ongoing after that. In the utilities budget, we've had a number of consolidation on our phone line system. Starla could really talk to you a lot about what we've done on phones if you find that interesting. And then we have lowered some of the budgets on gas based on actuals. And commissioners, this team stands for your questions. We can go into more detail about market merit too and employee benefits as well, since we've got that team here.
So Sarah, the maintenance position that's funded to start in July, that's why it's marked as half.
That's why it's marked half.
Okay, thank you. And then is that based on just the timeline that we're anticipating with those new buildings? And that's really when the need is gonna, feel free to jump in, Jimmy, if there's any color you want to add to it. But is that why we're talking about a July start date?
Well, he asked for it to start in January. I funded it starting in July.
Okay.
And I think it is, so it was a cost saving measure to add it on before the building, while the building's being constructed. But I think it's going to be a bit in early January before we're really under construction.
Anything you want to add, Jimmy?
No, I would agree. I don't see a reason to have this person here before the building is actually being built. So I'm fine with July.
Okay, thanks.
So it's truly tied to the building and not like there's a need now that we'd be stepping into?
I believe we are functioning just fine right now, but would you add another 100,000 square feet between all these buildings, it definitely presents a need.
Sounds defensible.
And we have not added position in maintenance since the fairgrounds expansion in 2013.
Which is why I'm really excited to hear you say, and we're functioning just fine that way. That's such a rare thing, so thank you.
I had something jumped out at me that maybe is clear to others, but not me. I was looking through the criminal justice services budget, and there is a line for buildings maintenance. Why? That's not typical in all of our departments, and just wondered why that one.
Yeah, that was an old So that's left over from the budget lid days when we could allocate additional costs to criminal justice partners. So it's left over from those days.
That's on page 102.
Yeah, under the CJS budget?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they used to, we used to have the same thing with the sheriff. So we used to be able to get around the tax lid, you could allocate expenses for public safety. So we added lines to a number of public safety departments and did cost allocation, allocated those costs out. We have not retroactively put them all back in. Also, CJS used to be a separate fund, so it had a few more lines than some of the other departments did, and it is no longer a separate fund, it is part of the general fund.
So, great, totally think I understand that. So is 55,000 there? It's not there? That's not a cost we have, or that is a cost we have?
It is a cost we have. The maintenance department started asking those departments to provide the funding for those little things that they might need. And so sometimes they'll tell Jimmy that they have the money for this or whatever, but I think it's mainly stuff that they don't deal with Jimmy on.
Okay.
It is a real cost. It just has not been pulled back into the
We can
county-wide.
move it back to maintenance, but the money is needed.
Okay. Darn, I thought I'd found something.
And with that,
Can I jump in on that? Because Commissioner Kelly, I appreciate that question. I was thinking about it from a different angle. I just wondered if there was any state money from state courts that help supply any. I mean, I know I'm always wishing. I've been accused of being an idealist before. So I'm just curious if there was any specific funnel of money that might come along with state courts in terms of helping to.
We
with the
receive no
building.
funds from
Okay.
OJA to house our district court.
Yep, thank you for clarifying.
And if I could clarify too, when I started here a few years ago, they had their own maintenance person. We were asked to absorb that into the maintenance department, which we did. I was told at the time by Pam that they did have some maintenance funds that they occasionally use for janitorial and different types of supplies. And so they continue to use that separately from what we use in building maintenance.
Got it, thanks.
There's a lot of old lines in that budget too, from when we used to cost out the Judicial and Law Enforcement Center related to our agreement with the City of Lawrence. Now the county is 100% responsible for those costs, so we don't use those lines anymore, but they'll show up on your report for 5 years because that's how we do it.
so I know I had some notes in here under utilities, but I'm not finding it under the page that's listed for utilities. But also the electric bill doesn't show up there. So I think we must have it in another location if you can help me. I think it was under admin,
Utilities is on page 66.
yeah, but not. Okay, so no, I think we're good. So it is there. It's on the last line there for electric. It's at that 750,000, and that is lower than the 2024 budget for electric.
Yep.
What changed?
I mean, based off the actuals from 2024, so I lowered these a little bit in reflection of that lower actual cost. There's still clearly room. We could go down further if that's something the commissioners would want. It just was small trim to sort of make sure that we were getting closer to actuals there.
Okay, see, I see there is some room there. And then are we also paying a premium on our electric bill for sourcing from somebody else's renewables?
I'd have to get back into that with Kim and ask for, I know we had some additional contracts on some of that for renewable energy, but I'd need to get that information to you.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind
Also-
having that.
Okay, and commissioners, just remember too, like on the electric line, there were expenses costed to the JLE electric line in 2023. So those are now together. So the total actual costs for electric in 2023, year-end actuals were about, $625, $630. So now those will all be consolidated on one account code. And Kim, can you make a note and we'll get some additional information back for commissioners?
Thank you for that. If we have conversations about adding rooftop solar or something similar to the JLE, will we also have a discussion about where some cost savings might come from that? I know it's an initial outlay, but then a savings on
Yeah.
like how much we can be generating from that.
Yeah,
roof
they will,
space.
they will be bringing you estimates about what the payback will be on those projects when we talk about the JLE.
And is there anything worked into, this wouldn't really be utilities, but the movement of emergency communications to another location, which that likely wouldn't happen in 25, that might be a 26 movement? I just know there'll be a lot of costs associated with towers and relocation and things like that.
Actually, there's not a whole lot of towers left there anymore. It would be built into the transition, it'd be built into the capital cost for that project.
Got it.
We would not
Okay.
put it in the
We won't be
operating
looking at
budget.
it elsewhere. Okay, thanks. Other questions, commissioners?
I have a question for Starla on ERP upgrades. It sounds like there's a little bit of, if we don't do this, we're putting some of our things at risk. If it went down, is that accurate? Is that inaccurate?
No.
Data at risk? Yeah.
So I have come into the county and we use a product that we hadn't upgraded for a long time. We upgraded it last year, and it is an on-prem solution, meaning meaning that it's on our servers in our data center. And so many of the more available ERP solutions are more, turning more towards a cloud-based solution, which allows for you to, as long as you have internet access, you could then have access to all of your financial, or also if we go this route, we need to do an RFP, we need to do we're looking at an outside organization to validate that it is necessary for us to do. But we're hopeful to look at this down the road to include our human resources solution to allow for a better opportunity for access for employment processes, as well as tying things better together. Right now, we have a lot of, we call them APIs, but they're where you pull the data and then it goes to this solution, it goes to this solution. We talk to different systems. We have processes that run at night, and if they fail, how it interplays with some of the other applications. So I'm just looking to have a better solution countywide that is available in the cloud versus on-prem. The reason being, our disaster, we did a cyber security event and included all the department heads. I believe you heard Robert mention it. It was very eye-opening for many of our department heads to get a better handle on where our data is located and what our backup processes are, how quickly we can have things back up and operational in case we do have a ransom attack. We are looking at different opportunities and software solutions to help the county get, because we know that the likelihood of something like this happening is possible. And so we're trying to make sure that we have all of our solutions available to us and can get us back up and operational very quickly. And so being more cloud-based, believe it or not, is a better option for some of those solutions.
This could be a completely ignorant question, but those are usually where we find neat solutions. Is there a space, is it better to go cloud, or is it better to work? We can't be the only governmental agency in this county that is worried about offsite storage. I seem to remember a day when there was partnerships of we're going to store some data on your servers and you're going to store some data on our servers. Is that a solution at all, or is it cloud is the only way to go?
It's not the only way to go.
Mm-hmm.
It just requires additional hardware, and it also requires additional maintenance. What we have found with our current solution provider is that it takes a lot of effort to get their solution up and operational pretty quickly, and so there is a lack in timing there. We are working with, thankfully, you guys supported us last year to have a security engineer. And we meet every 2 weeks to review our disaster recovery process. We've gone to our location and evaluated what other solutions and software and servers we need, and we continue to advance that. And so if the solution is for us not to go cloud-based and change out our ERP solution, we would look to purchase additional hardware to store in our disaster recovery location, and also have some type of replication processes in place to have that solution available in a more, in a quick, if something would happen. Everything costs.
Well, and this last isn't really a question, it's more of a comment, and you and I had a discussion yesterday about the needs of a certain department and the request, and I see the developer request in there. And it's interesting what we said about criminal justice services and how we do maintenance. I wonder if there's a place moving forward to think about, requests coming from different departments. So if human resources is asking for a major project, how do we associate that with human resources? Because the budget request that you have is about 11% increase, right? And I'm pretty sure that's helping many, many departments. And it's just important to sort of balance that against all the other departments. So if we're talking about court services, it's helpful for me to know, because I really use that increased evaluation as sort of a benchmark to look at all departments' increase. Because if everyone's increasing 11%, that's not sustainable long term. And so we've got to think about ways across the county to say, I understand that there is a higher cost and oftentimes it's salary, but how do we reduce other costs or look for other ways? And my main point here is just comparing it department and not putting it all on IT, that when they're asking for things, and the same would be true of maintenance as well. If the fair is asking for more, it's got to be associated with the fair so we can evaluate it across the board.
We have a pretty centralized approach to how we
Yeah.
budget, and that's been pretty traditional here at Douglas County. I mean, it's definitely, it's just a choice. I mean, we could allocate costs differently, but it would require a lot more finance support.
And I just might add, I came in to the county and there was some other areas that needed to be pulled together and build relationships. And I feel that that's been a high priority of mine, is to build the relationship with the courts, build the relationship with the sheriff's office. And I believe we've done a good job of collaborating with them and building that. But with that, we've also added additional tasks that those departments have asked for assistance, because we do have a wonderful team of IT, including our SOGI, who built the budget app. And there's just so many more applications that we can continue to do to bring that cost down, but there's cost. Thanks.
I know we've made some changes this year in our budget formatting, and we're trying to get more and more clear and more transparent, and be able to get that out to the public in ways that are just easier to digest than this. Are there costs associated with that continued work? And that might be a Sarah question that we anticipate through IT of further kind of streamlining our budget process.
I think there's some, but I think a lot of it is finance born. Having Jake full-time and adding a finance analyst is more we can be able to put on our website. We manage that content, so it's simply our ability to get that stuff online. I think we've made huge, this entire book is online in a couple of different ways. And you get line item detail for both, we re-estimate the current year on every line item in the budget, and we estimate every line item for next year. And then you have 4 years of actuals all online. So it's I don't know how you get more transparent than that.
I'd say perhaps more digestible is maybe where I'm going. Transparent, we've
So
got.
in terms of
digestible
digest,
is
yeah,
hard.
I think those are questions where I think really from the commission's perspective, what summary information do you find most helpful? I mean, that's why we try to prepare these summaries, because that's what works for us as staff. And we think Socrata makes things very digestible because you can kind of manipulate numbers and move around. But really, I think we would look to the commission to help guide us on what summary information, less than 775 pages, is what the commissioners would want to think would be better for the community.
Yeah, if there's a solution where you could just download the information into people's brains,
Yeah.
that would be really helpful.
I don't even know if that would work, because they don't, right,
Yeah,
I
Jake
mean,
can figure it out.
Can you get it some
sure.
sort of AI app, Starla or Soji? We'll get it, see if we can create it.
And I say that a little bit jokingly, but also for the public to recognize that it does take a significant amount of investment to understand a budget at the level that sometimes, like you over summarizing things, it simplifies things in a way that doesn't honor the complexity of the systems that we're working with and how they overlap. And so I understand, and I really appreciate staff's work to continually make it, I don't like the word transparent. You know, every document that we have is available, but I'm not sure there's a shortcut for doing the work that the commission does, that staff does, to understand the complexity of the budget. So, you know, we always want to try. We always want to make it better. I'm always open to hearing feedback from the public on what specifically it is that they're looking for to make that more transparent. But, you know, we have more hearings on our budget than any other governmental agency in Douglas County. We provide it all online. We have very open conversations about everything that's here. So I'm not saying that we couldn't do a better job. I'm just saying I think our expectations around the word transparency is not the same as understanding it.
I really want to echo that. That's kind of what I've been hearing walking and knocking doors in the community, and is they're using the word transparency, and I say, well, it's all here. What do you want to know? And it's really more about it's complicated in ways that can't be simplified and can't be easily explained. So yeah, it's that engagement piece is how do we get folks up to speed with what they would like to know about it, and other than on an individual basis when they ask, which I'm very happy to, you know, for people to ask those questions. But yeah, I love how transparent our process is. It's all the laundry, it's right here, it's on our meetings and for people to engage with. And as I think it was mentioned yesterday, when we had 5 people online watching, and all or most of them were staff. So it's there, it's very transparent, it's very available for folks. It just takes a time and an investment. So sorry, that was a side note. I'll ask a question that is almost anti-technology, but I noticed that our Register of Deeds, and I think maybe Treasurer and Clerk's Office, they still, I think by state statute, are required to maintain microfilm. Is that?
Yes.
Wow.
Thank you.
And I don't think we can do anything about it. I think it's all state statute. Is that right?
That is correct.
What's the is that a reasonable way to be storing data, or is that just redundant and we have to do it because the state requires it? If that went away, would we see any decrease in our ability to store and retrieve data?
What you have to think about are the old solutions, and trying to get that information converted into readable formatting is costly, time-consuming, and so we do just have that fish, you know, available. And
I know Kent's team is also digitizing some of that information so that we have a backup of it and that it's easier to access, but I don't know if we can get rid of the old microfilm.
I think it's the current that I have more of an issue with. Like, they're still backing things up onto microfilm, microfiche because they're required.
Not to that, we're not.
No.
The like, if the only thing that I'm aware of from the treasurer's office is that if an individual comes in and asks for the information back to 19, I don't know how far, long ways ago, 73, 67, like long ways to go back, then they have to supply that. And so depending upon what solutions were in place here in IT, they have to just continue to go through that and get that information and supply it to our consumers.
So maintaining the old data is one thing, but I'll just double check with the Register of Deeds, but he had 3 brand new packets of microfiche ready to get shipped off to the salt mines for current data. So I'm just curious, like what the human cost or the, what our salary cost is of maintaining something that is probably thoroughly redundant and old-fashioned, but required by state law. So that was another side note. Other questions that commissioners have for our staff? We've had a presentation on McGrath, and that's coming up yet, so that's a big piece. So if people are wondering why we're asking a lot of questions about it, we have some of that information from our commission notes earlier, and more is yet coming. So, commissioners, anything else for today? Okay.
Do we want to talk real quickly about deliberations so that we can sort of set that and then talk about it again tomorrow? So generally, ideally, after we finish hearings, we give commissioners a day or so to think and reflect on their notes, and then complete your budget deliberation sheet and turn it in to Cammie and I. We have a really tight timeline this year for deliberations. Traditionally, we need 3 days of mornings to deliberate. Commissioner Kelly and I are unavailable next Wednesday, the 17th. So if we want to skip Thursday, so commissioners can work on their notes, I would want us to start deliberations on Friday morning. And generally working in the morning is more than sufficient. Then we have the afternoon to go back and check work. Does that sound reasonable for commissioners if we took Thursday morning off and then you were able to submit your deliberation worksheets to Cammie by noon on Thursday? Is that, or I don't know, Cammie or 2, we might, but. Okay, so. Okay. And
I'm sorry, say that out loud.
Starting is not as hard as number changing. So that's what I think, like if we start on Friday with general questions, then we have the weekend and then Monday afternoons and Tuesday afternoons to check these things. I also want to be really clear for the public here. When we finish deliberations, we are not done. We have a lot of work yet to be done. We still have a review of our capital improvement plan scheduled for August 7 and Consolidated Fire District 1. So these would be tentative numbers while we continue to balance and prepare forms and prepare for the public hearing. So it would just be a tentative pause and allow us to go back and check those numbers. So does noon on Thursday work for commissioners, or would you like a little more time?
I would love to have as much time as could be had, but I recognize that we need to be able to hit the ground running on Friday morning. So I don't think we can start Thursday morning if that's still at all being talked about. We need that time to process.
I feel like the latest we could go is 3. If you could get your information to us by 3 o'clock Thursday.
Okay.
And then we'd meet back here Friday morning at 9 and start deliberations.
Okay. 3 o'clock work for folks? All right. In which case, unless we have anything else, we are adjourned until tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Okay. Thank you all.